Hello everyone, welcome to Scorched Earth Toys at anymoon.com's review of Bandai's High Metal R VF1J Plus Grenade Box Protection Armor Toy. This is the Do You Remember Love variant released in September 2015 for 9,800 yen. Inside the lovely Tenjin decorated box, you will find two trays of goodness. The first tray has the VF1J itself. It has 4 wings, 2 pairs. One wings set has hard points on it. The second set does not. There are no wings currently on the toy in the box. There are 3 landing gears, 2 for the back, 1 for the front. There's replacement head lasers. A canopy you'll need to swap out for the heat shield and fire mode. 3 display stand adapters, 1 for each mode. A 4th display stand adapter for use with the grenade box protection. There are 4 missiles, 2 pairs of Do You Remember Love style fixed posed hands, a gun gripping hand, and there are optional intakes for fighter mode that have turbine detail, as well as the gun. On the second tray, you have the grenade box protection armor. There are optional missiles and missile spent pieces. You'll have another set of 2 Do You Remember Love style fixed posed hands, and you get a blue, basically oversized toothpick to use for popping out and swapping your missile parts, as well as a larger gun grip for use when you have those giant forearm armors on the toy. 2 questions to answer right off the bat. First, do High Metal R toys have a lot of metal in them? The answer to that is no. They have metal feet, they have a metal swing bar, and they have metal in the shoulders. That metal in the shoulders is new. The original High Metal toys have plastic there. Are High Metal R toys better than the original High Metal toys? The answer to that is yes, but only ever so slightly. They have thicker biceps, which is nice. They also have a removable nose cone, which allows for that grenade box protection armor. Otherwise, the VF1J versions of the toys are essentially the same. Now, the VF1S toys, which are reviewed separately, do have some differences over the original High Metal that I'd say make the HMR toys much better than the original High Metal, even though those differences are only smaller, things like a bigger head and different Jolly Roger placement. I definitely prefer the HMR VF1S toys. On the right, on your right, you can see sort of the bone yellow of the Toynami 1100. It definitely stands out in this lineup as being sort of off-colored, so a strike against the Toynami there. In the background, there's the Arcadia VF1J, which you might not be able to tell, kind of has a slight pink hue to it, so that's a little bit of an issue. But otherwise, the Arcadia toy is superior in just about all respects here, including size, obviously. So if you're tempted to get an HMR toy and think you are getting something along the lines of a Yamato V2, you are not. There's lots of compromises, and we're about to go through those. If you have installed grenade box protection armor on a Yamato V2 toy, then a lot of what we're about to do is going to seem pretty similar to you. To begin with, though, you're going to go ahead and pop off any optional hands you may have on the toy, so they come right off like that. And then you need to reinstall the original hands, the little tiny guys that can recess into the forearms, because what you're going to need to do is pop open that little trap door and rotate the fist around so you have no fist showing. And you're also going to go ahead and remove your nose cone, because you're not going to need that where we're going. Go ahead and repeat with the other hand on the other side. Your toy should look something like this now, and we're going to go ahead and work on the diaper. Begin with the hip armors, and they attach in a little bit different way. They have a slot in the back, and they attach to the peg that you would use to attach the legs in fighter mode, and the armor just really pegs into the back of the toy and then leaves the hips free to angle however they want without needing to float on top of the hip. So you can bring your leg forward just a little bit and then just press back and it'll lock into position. Then go ahead and open up your wings, and I would say with the toy facing you is easiest. Just bring the back of the diaper around and you can see clearly where it all lines up into the proper position. And then you're going to go ahead and take the front of the diaper and just try to line everything up. And it should just go right into place. Apply a little pressure on the sides if you need to. Then take your side missiles, that's what locks everything together, and just put it on. Now I'd say my one complaint is I wish these things latched in a little bit tighter, but there you go. Now you've got your grenade box protection diaper. We're going to do the shoulder armors next. The shoulder armors are comprised of two parts, a sleeve and then the missile bay. So go ahead and put the sleeve on. I'll collapse these wings here. And then the missile bay right on top of them should just slide in if you got everything lined up properly. Or you could just install them all at once like this and plop it right on, like so. Next we'll do the chest and the forearms. Here's the chest. It's got a couple little hooks on the back of it. They just hook on to the top, and you press down and it will be very snug on there. So you know you've done it if you can hold the toy and shake it by that chest. Then we can take the forearm armors. You can see there's a fist already attached to them. They should they'll find kind of a groove pretty quickly on you. And then you just want to line up with the pegs. Here, a nice clip, and you know that that armor is in place. Do the same thing on the other side. The leg armors consist of 4 different parts, but you can connect everything so you have 2 halves. There's a fin slot here that needs to receive the fin on the leg, and when you've done that, you can see it'll just kind of sink, the leg sinks right into the armor perfectly. So then you just line up the other side, apply pressure, and you've now got your leg armor on, and again you would just repeat on the other side. Okay, now we're going to put the feet armor on. As you can tell, it looks like it has little tiny feet. I would say this armor is optional though. It just slides on over the existing foot. Here, click into place there, and then there's a back piece as well. Just slide it on, and now that looks like a much bigger foot than you've got on the other side. And then you're going to just turn the toy around and install, could have this down, install the backpack booster. Just slides in from a peg, and do that on the other side. Once fully dressed, your GBP toy can hold a gun, but what you're going to need to do is remove the hand that's on there, find your pistol grip hand and the pistol grip. You're going to need to feed that in there. It's a pretty tight fit, which is good because that means once it's in, it's going to stay there. Let's wiggle jiggle this through, get the finger where we want it, take your gun, insert it in, and then there's a hole and a ball joint. Install it, and there you go. Now your GBP is holding its gun. If you find your boosters are falling backwards, you probably need to just apply a little bit of pressure downward. That should get them into this kind of fairly locked position. It's not totally locked. They can still fall backwards. But it is definitely much more secure. Well, I've got the toy turned around. Let's show off the missiles. You can go ahead and open these doors. They've got kind of the extending hinge that conceals. So all very nicely done. There's the backwards facing missiles as well. Flipping the toy around, you've got forward-facing missiles there. You can remove the hip missiles, but they are a little too easily removed. I found them popping off sometimes when I did not want them to pop off, so that was a little bit annoying. There are the forearm missiles, which can be removed. They are very difficult to remove. That was a little tough, but there you go. You have, obviously, the chest missiles, which are nice. There you go, just little red circles on gray plastic, not a huge deal here. And then you also have the missile bays inside the shoulders, and when you close these up, they become kind of problematic to open again because there's no little fingernail hole for you, so you gotta really fight with them. But they have the extending hinge, and then they open up, and there is your missile detail. So all very nicely done. All of the missiles you could really hope to have are there with hinged doors. One of my problems with the high metal toys is that they give you extra parts that seem just kind of supercilious and make you think you're spending money on stuff you wouldn't really want. One of those examples would be these missile parts that make it look like you've already fired your missiles. So I can go ahead and use the oversized toothpick, come back behind the chest and poke out the missiles. So there, it just fell down. And then I can go ahead and install this piece, and now it looks like I've fired my missiles. I can go ahead and put that back on the toy, again just pressing down on the chest. I can then take off the shoulders, and same idea, I can open up the bay door, and then I can use my little toothpick behind it and push up, and then I could put on, again, some spent missiles, and I could just work my way down the toy. I can pop out the wrist missiles, I could take off the hip missiles, I can come down here, I can pop out these little missiles here, because they're little individual parts instead of just being one solid piece of plastic with painted tips. So again, it's gratuitous in nature, kind of like how we got two sets of wings, one with hard points and one without. So I guess I'll just go ahead and pop that all out. So you can do this. You could have a toy where it's fired all of its missiles, or you could have all of the missiles still be present. Up to you on how you want to do that. You've got the option. I just can't imagine many people are going to go with the spent missiles look, and I personally never would. So for me, I would have rather saved a few bucks or gotten some sort of other accessory that I would have gotten more mileage out of. Here's a real quick look at the three most recent GBP toys. On the right, we have Arcadia's VF1J combo set, which was 23,800 yen. Then we have the Bandai High Metal in the middle. That was 9,800 yen. And then we have the 69.99 Toynami toy. Now, let's take a closer look at this Toynami toy. It is the cheapest and simplest of the GBPs. I'm not a huge fan of the Toynami 1100 toy, mostly because it has little rings in it that tend to break. And then it becomes very sloppy and loose as a toy. It does do a couple things really well as a GBP. One, you don't need to have different fists. The same fists that were on the basic toy work with the GBP attached, so that's nice. There's also some optional fists included. Also, the shoulder armors just go right on top of the shoulders, which is theoretically how a GBP is supposed to work, where both Yamato and then Arcadia, as well as Bandai now, have included like oversized shoulders that you can then put the shoulder armors on. So 2 pluses for the Toynami toy, but otherwise lots of minuses, usually in regard to sculpt and just the overall look of the toy. And then the back missiles here, they aren't actually opening missiles, and you can't do things like remove the grenades from the forearms, although you can't really do that on the Arcadia either. And the fact that you can do them on Bandai seems just gratuitous. So you do have the opening missiles and all that good stuff. So the Toynami toy is very much your budget alternative. You get what you pay for, though. The Bandai High Metal R is definitely doing well in comparison to the Arcadia as far as a grenade box protection toy is concerned. But it does have a lot of compromises as we go through. So let's go ahead and take off the GBP and look at the underlying toy. Okay, so really quickly we'll go through Articulation, which is exactly the same as it was on the original High Metal toys. So if you're really familiar with that, you can skip ahead here. You have a shoulder joint that lets you spin all the way around. You have the ability to pivot the arm out at the shoulder. There's a twist point mid-bicep. There is a double jointed elbow, which is very nice. Let's get that a little bit more pivoted. It's very tight out of the box, so there you go. Fists rotate on a peg because you can swap those fists out. Head is on a ball joint, but it also has a pivot up and down. Head lasers are individually articulated. Then going down, there is no waist to speak of. You do have hips. The hips will run into the wings fairly quickly, going backwards or forward, but they do pivot outwards. And they do feature an extension gimmick that lets you get them even further outward. Going down, you have the Guerre walk joint, which you may need because of those wings getting in your way. And then you have the knee, which comes back all the way, goes that far forward. You have your feet, which you could pull out to make them even more dynamic. And they do have the little twisting gimmick on the front part of the foot, so you can get a pretty wide stance and then manipulate the foot to make it seem like everything is natural. So very good articulation. Everything you really want to have is present. There's no waist or back articulation to speak of, but otherwise very, very good. I do have a separate transformation guide I encourage you to check out, but just real quick for those of you who I know will be bothered by this, in order to go to Guerre mode, we do need to put on a canopy glass piece. So we take off our heat shield and swap it out. While I'm doing that, we could take a close look at this pilot figure here. He is not Hikaru because he is from Do You Remember Love, so he's sort of a weird hybrid pilot figure, leaving Bandai the door open to do a repaint later down the road and call it the SDF Macross TV version of this toy. But now let's go ahead and take a look at Guerre mode. Now we have Guerre mode, and it is dead sexy. It's stable. It's you can have fun with it. You can play with the feet. You can play with the legs. You can do everything you really want to do with the Guerre mode toy. I mentioned earlier that there are no hard points on one of the sets of wings. I'm going to go ahead and pull those off now. So they clip on well enough. They stay in position. That's all nice. Then you have your alternate wings, which again, the differences between these things, so minor. It seems silly that they actually felt the need to do this. There are missiles. The missiles have a little more red paint than I think I would typically want to see on them. They have tips that are red and the base of them are red. Hopefully that is unique to the Hikaru toy. Well, this isn't technically a Hikaru toy, so hopefully they're unique to this paint scheme. We saw on the original High Metal that later toys like Max's VF1J just had normal white missiles, so maybe the HMR will follow that as well. But there you go. There's missiles on the toy now. Again, articulation is very good. Toy is very stable. Guerre mode is a win. Finally, we get to fighter mode, and I think it looks pretty darn good, although I've certainly heard people disparage it before. It might be a little thick when bird's eye viewing. From the side, I think it looks pretty good, although there is a question about how angled the nose should be. But I mean, overall, it's pretty tight. Nice detail work, good paint apps, and it looks just like I think a VF1 really should. So even if you compare it right next to a V2 toy, it holds its own. So I think fighter mode looks good, but where the big bummer is the lack of integrated landing gears. Now, you can make lots of arguments for that, and I would say it's probably mostly a cost-cutting thing, but instead, to put landing gears on the toy, you need to remove some panels, and then once they are removed, you have to find the landing gear and put it on. The front one has a tow bar on it. Nothing's articulated. The wheels aren't rubber. They don't spin. They are just painted plastic and pop on the toy. As you can see there. Oops. So there's a peg in the front and the back. Everything comes together. Another thing about fighter mode is it's incredibly well built. It tabs together perfectly well. So there we go. Now we have landing gears on the toy, and they're tall enough landing gears where you could have the gun underneath. But if you want to put the gun underneath, again, you're going to have another part you need to pull off here, and then it collapses, and then this tab just goes in between the arms, as you've seen on numerous other VF1s, VF1 toys I should say. Also, there are turbine detail pieces. You can pop off the tops of the legs and put on, oops, got that the wrong way, put on what looks like an intake turbine. So there you go. So once all the parts are installed, it's a pretty good looking fighter mode again, now in a landing gear position. If you have a Tamashii Stage Act display stand, that will allow you to not need the landing gear nearly as often. So it seems like that would have been a lot better accessory to include with this toy rather than spent GBP pieces. Overall, I think it's a really good toy for 1/100 scale. It could have been a lot more expensive and had a lot more integrated things, but I think that would kind of kill the purpose. So I am a big fan. These days, V2 160 toys are pretty hard to come by, and they're very expensive. So I say, if you can, get into the High Metal R line, especially with all the promise of Bad Guys and Destroids coming up. Thanks for viewing. Check out my full review on anymoon.com and my transformation video.